Okay, we're recording to the cloud. So we'll start in about a minute or two, just to be respectful of people that are probably still trying to navigate. Janine, are you in your office these days, or are you home office?
I'm home and am redecorating an upstairs spare room because I don't know that I'm going to actually have a office in the way that I used to in the future. So
You guys reevaluating that at eWeb about permanent offices? Yeah, I mean, we're not there yet at all, because we'll, we're a essential service and a lot of us need to be there. But most of my group is remote and will be for a while. Hey, Casey. So I don't know, those discussions are going on though, because, if people can't actually do it, do you really need the permanent space for one person assigned to one office, etc.?
yeah, I mean, we were in the process of smurging everybody over into the Rock, which created, a lot of small cubbies to get us all in there. And I think the thought is, well, maybe we have more shared office space that is more collaborative workspace that's larger and is more conducive to collaboration, because people are only in the office 2 or 3 days versus 5 days a week. So
Yeah,
I don't know what it'll look like, but I know that we're revisiting that whole world. I mean, some people have to be in the office all the time, but people who do the work like I do, I miss seeing people. So, it's a trade-off for sure.
Yeah, strange times. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I think we have others that'll join us as we move along. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Just wanted to cover a couple things prior to us having our speaker begin. I'm Teresa Brand, as you guys all know, Transportation Outreach and Marketing Manager for Lane Transit District. And I am the chair for now and probably for a while of Greenlane. Robin's like, yes. Welcome and thank you for joining us. The board and the events committee really appreciate your attendance and you also sharing this with others. Lots going on right now, so it's a little hard to capture people's attention just because there's a lot happening, but we really appreciate it. We're trying to provide topics that are timely for things that are going on right now. So we've been really making some strategies around that. And you'll see that as we move into the new year and things that are, pretty relevant for the issues that we're all facing. I wanted to thank Jennifer, who has joined us. She's our new admin assistant, and Tammy has done some training with her. And so you'll probably see her name on different things. But she's helping us with our admin support and doing registration on the website and those different functions. And obviously our events committee members for really coming up with the topics and tracking people down and kind of making the glue for our meetings happen. Other than that, if you are interested in joining a committee, if you're not already on a committee, we'd appreciate and welcome that. Either on the events committee, a board member at large, kind of any way that you want to commit time and energy is always appreciated. And also, if you have any topics ideas, send them to me or email me, or you can call me 541-337-8238. And my information is usually always on any emails that you get from me. Just a couple of meeting reminders, and you've probably been on Zoom, so you got these down. Please leave yourself muted during the meeting until we call on you. You can raise your hand or whatever if it's time for you to share. When you're speaking, turn off any background noise or anything. Phone notification sounds, any notification sounds of beeps on your computer. If you are going to walk away for whatever reason, just go to either a photo or a blank screen so we don't see the comings and goings. It's very distracting, especially when the presenter is doing their thing. Other than that, thank you for attending. So this month, we're going to introduce ourselves like we do each month, your organization, your name, and also we'd like you to share a couple of things that you're doing to maintain balance right now with all that's going on in 2020. That's probably particularly important in this last week and through this week, because the stress level is pretty high because of elections and pandemic and fires and kids at home and all those things. And so maybe you can share again your organization, your name, and what you're doing to maintain balance right now with everything that's going on. And maybe Brandi can start.
Thanks, Teresa. Yes, Brandi Crawford Ferguson with the McKenzie River Trust. And balance, you know, I think right now just the change in the seasons, I'm really welcoming that. And I'm actually appreciating Doug's background there, those brilliant fall colors. So yeah, that's what I would have to say, nature.
What about you, Robin?
I'm Robin Forster, as most of you know, with Feel So Alive. And my new tagline is helping you to navigate your health throughout the different seasons of your life. And in terms of not necessarily balance, but just trying to keep it together, my 3 words when I started this year were solvent, leadership, and to create. And they have morphed into compassion, patience, and oh, that's so funny. There's a 3rd one, which I can't remember, but patience. Oh, grace, compassion and grace to ourselves and to everyone else in our environment. And then patience.
Thanks, Robin. I can totally relate. Hi, Angie. What we're doing, and I'll call on you when we make the circle, is our name, our organization, and then also what are we doing right now to maintain balance with all the things that are going on. So Doug, why don't you go ahead?
Hi guys, I'm Doug with Technoprint, where we know it's not just ink on paper, it's your image. And just to try to keep balance, I keep trying to focus on the moment, you know, that I'm here with you people. I'm not voting, I'm not doing a lot of other things. I'm here, I just ate lunch, my stomach's full, I've got friends that I'm looking at. It's good.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks for sharing. What about you, Janine? What are you doing?
This week, I've just been trying to remember to breathe. So that's about the best I could ask for myself. And I'm trying to just give myself some grace and to allow myself to be panicked and do whatever I need to do to just kind of make it through each day. So a little self-kindness.
Thanks for that. How about you, Sarah?
Yeah, Sarah Whitney, Long Tom Watershed Council, and I guess the best I'm able to do with balance is limit, but really control the time that I work and the time that I'm not working. So I do my old 9 to 5, and then I'm not working, not checking anything.
That's a super good practice. I so suck at that, but nice job. How about you, Casey?
Oh gosh, Teresa, I have to say, when you first asked, I was like, balance? I have no balance. What am I going to say? But then I was like, wait, I do. We just went with my family. So my sister and her kiddos, and even my neighbors came over to a coast cabin my family's had for generations last weekend. And it was those subtle joys. The kids went out and made a fort and caught 2 snakes. One is Snakezilla and the other's Fifi. And they watch it eat a toad. And I was like, and so that's my balance. That's my happy space. That's my sit with a cup of coffee and be quiet and be peaceful and thankful. So thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. It's been more challenging this year than in my whole life. So I totally get it. How about you, Thomas?
Well, thank you. Thomas Price, Safety, Health, and Environmental Works Worldwide. I'm also probably going to be speaking up possibly later as co-ed rep. I'm in my last week of doing that duty, but I'm getting through life mostly with the support of friends and neighbors. And I've also got a practice of having some leadership coaching that I access. And most recently, I've been doing some getting through crisis as a leader modality with actually a collective of people across the US. And it's really been helpful to see all of us come up with different solutions and different ways to kind of proactively meet the challenges that we have currently and put into.
Great, thanks for sharing. How about you, John Q?
Yeah, I'm working with Thomas on the COAD. We've stood up a site called lane.recovers.org where people can put in their needs, or if they want to donate materials, or if they're a volunteer offering services, we try to match up the needs with the goods and services. And boy, it's just been heartbreaking, all the needs that we're seeing up to McKenzie, especially after the Red Cross did what I guess it always does. And I've been talking a lot with Thomas, listening to the leadership webinars, and been walking the dog a lot. So long walks. I live on Fox Hollow, and there's a lot of great hills around here, but that's about it.
And John Q's with the City of Eugene too.
Great, thank you. How about you, Angie?
Hey guys, I'm having difficulty with my webcam, so I apologize. I think meditation and being in nature and spending time with friends and family have kind of anchored me to be more positive right now and be more resilient. Keep moving on, keep pushing on.
Well, we appreciate that. You know, all that we share, we all have our own coping mechanisms, but it's nice to be able to hear some others, and maybe we can adopt some of those. I personally have decided to take on some new habits because it's been too much sitting for me. As many of you know, I used to ride my bike to work, and that's pretty much gone out the window since March. And so all the sitting has been really bad for my mental health. And so I have been getting up at a little after 5 and taking the dog walking in the dark for a half hour, 40 minutes or so, with everything blinking so no one tries to hit us. And then I bought an exercise bike that I'm going to set up in the house. So when it's too yucky out, I'll be doing that. And then also I've been making sure that I'm walking in nature, in the trees, or at the coast, mostly in the trees somewhere, just because I'm so thankful that the ones that are there. So anyway, all those things have just helped my spirit not stay in the tank, because for a while there, it was really kind of going, especially after we laid off all of my staff. It was, a lot of low time. So it's good to just be able to establish something new and stay in the light. So anyway, thank you all for sharing. I really appreciate it. So perhaps if anybody has any kudos or member announcements, maybe we can have you share those right now. Raise your hand and share if you have something you want to share for the group. Robin?
I have a kudo, even though he's not here. This is to Jansen. We needed some stuff done, and it was miscellaneous kind of repair stuff. And it was like, sure, I could DIY and, YouTube it, but it was so much easier to have Jansen come do it. And he's so good at repurposing and reusing. And I just really appreciate his skill set. So wanted to put that out there if anybody needs some help with odd job project things around the house. He does more than just flooring.
Great. Sarah, I have a, I think you raised your hand, but I see a lamp shade and I don't see you, but feel free to share if you are. There you are. Okay.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. I just want to let people know that the Longtime Watershed Council's annual celebration is coming up, and this time around it's going to be a series of over several days. So we'll just have a couple of people speaking each day, so it's not an overwhelming event, and just a little bit of a taste of the watershed, so to speak. And actually there's a literal component to that. And that is that you can purchase a CSA box that will support the council, and then receive some recipes, and you'll have the option that everybody who wants to will be cooking and eating the same meal together during these events. And then also the Upper Willamette Stewardship Network is going to be having a film festival that is very well known, and my goodness, I didn't prepare for this very well. But that's also going to be on the council website. So that is the, it's the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. And that's coming up here pretty soon, just $10 per household to watch together. And these are national renowned movies. So very worth your time. Thank you, Tracy.
That sounds great. I appreciate that. Angie had something in the chat. Let me pull that up. Lane County recently launched the fixitlanecounty.com website. That's an online directory of businesses in Lane County that fix, mend, and repair consumer goods. So that's a good resource. You might want to share that with people that you work with or friends and family. We want to promote local small businesses doing this work and highlight why repair is so important. We'll also have the upcoming Fix It fairs online. So those have been really great and a great resource. So FYI. Okay, any other shares? Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on. I just want to make an announcement in regards to, it is the Daniel Swantek Award time again for the year. And so we are taking nominations for that. And those basically are nominations that go into a pool, and then we present those to the board. And one group, one nonprofit is selected to receive the award plus a $500 sponsorship that they can use for some sort of sustainability project or effort. They just have to be a nonprofit in our region. They don't have to, no longer need to be a Greenlane member. They just need to be a nonprofit in our region. And they're again voted on by the board. The application deadline is November 20th. And how nonprofits apply is basically they send us a paragraph on their organization and a paragraph description of what they want to do for their project or their effort. And that's what the board votes on. And then the winner will be announced at the December meeting, which will also include presentations on the Bold Steps finalists. That's a joint meeting that we'll be doing with City of Eugene. So they'll be announced in December. And we'll let them know right ahead so they know to be present. And those will again be Zoom meetings due to the nature of what's been happening. So if you know of anybody, any nonprofit that is interested in applying, let them know so they can get their information in. Last year we had 4 applications and it was a hard decision. Those are really great projects. And people are welcome to resubmit if they weren't awarded last year. It was Friends of the Trees last year. So if you were interested in applying, you just would need to have a 3-year gap between if you've gotten the award before and if you were to get it again. So again, share that far and wide if you would. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on. This month we have Brandi Crawford Ferguson, Associate Director of Philanthropy for the McKenzie River Trust, and a 3rd-generation native of McKenzie watershed. She's worked for the trust for 12 years. The trust is a nonprofit land conservation group that was founded in 1989. The devastating Holiday Farm wildfire burned over 170,000 acres in the McKenzie River Valley, displaced over 400 families that live up there, and also leveled the community of Blue River, as I'm sure you've heard. Brandi will share how the McKenzie River Trust immediately pivoted their staff, their resources, and called on their valuable connections in the community to help meeting the needs, the urgent needs of the hundreds of families that were evacuated overnight, and also what lies ahead, and how the trust will be working together with other agencies to help in the short and long-term recovery of the McKenzie River Valley. So Brandi, you're on.
Great. Thanks, Teresa. Appreciate the time and the opportunity to share, I guess, our little piece of this incredible story, this experience by, our community that, of course, hit everybody pretty hard up and down the river system and up and down the valley. It touches us all in different ways, and it's nice to at least be able to have the opportunity to share a little of some of the good stuff that's been happening and how the community's really stepped up. And this particular picture I actually have on the first slide here, I took 41 days after the fire. For those that may or may not recognize, those are sword ferns that I'd been watching for a couple of weeks and was concerned, are they gone? Are they going to come back? And it was just like this sense of hope seeing that first little fiddlehead pop up, and just wanted to share that, at least as we kind of get started for that good opportunity to really to think about the little things. And so let's see here. So you already shared some of the impacts there, Teresa, in your introduction, so I don't need to repeat too much of some of the Holiday Farm impacts with the over 400 homes that were lost, and the number of acreage, 170,000 plus burned in our watershed. And about 25 miles of McKenzie corridor that was impacted, starting from the community of Rainbow, which is where the fire started, and reached all the way down to Vida, and practically overnight, within less than 24 hours, as many of us know. But just essentially, and again, as Therese mentioned, the community of Blue River completely gone. And that, except for the school, thankfully, the McKenzie School, which was built in the 1930s, is still standing, is still very much a community hub. But outside of that, the library's gone, the septic, the water, businesses. And so, yeah, for that community especially, it'll be a rebuilding from the beginning on. Wanted to also mention, I'm definitely not an expert on this, that I just have experience. That actually is a quote that I heard recently listening to somebody speak from the Paradise Fire in Northern California. She started out by saying just that she's obviously gained a lot of experience, as many of us have. We've never experienced a disaster like this in our community. We've been very, very fortunate, and here we are, and of course across our great state, what we've experienced in recent months. So we're all gaining experience with this, but just wanting to share that. So also just stepping back to this river, right? This river that connects us all. I mean, we all choose to call this place home. We all live, work, and play here. We connect, to the river, to the valley, to nature in different ways. But just wanting to take a pause and a moment to, really acknowledge why we all choose to live here, and how this time since September 7th, how we've been able to really step up and care for each other, and bringing our resources and our dollars for some, and just continue forward. And as well as, McKenzie is the sole source of drinking water for over 250,000 people, which is always an interesting thing. Not everybody realizes that, or thinks about the McKenzie that way. Many of us connect by, fly fishing or rafting or hiking or whatever it is. I know growing up here, that wasn't something I thought about when I would go inner tubing down the McKenzie, that when I went home and turned on the faucet, that was the same water. And to think about that as well, the human impact as well as the natural resource impact. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Yeah. So just to give a little bit of background, but not too much about the trust for those that may or may not be familiar, McKenzie River Trust helps people protect and care for the lands and rivers they cherish in Western Oregon. And how do we do that? Essentially, we're a nonprofit in real estate. We buy land. Natural lands, to protect it in perpetuity. And so our organization, again, was founded in 1989, a nonprofit. We actually this year expanded, well, as you can tell, we're way beyond the McKenzie now. That is where we started, but it was all of Lane County, but now we've expanded all the way into Central Coast as well, because there was no other land trust working there. So we're working as far north as of this year into Newport, which is a huge expansion for us. That was our really big deal for us this year. Obviously, with the fires, we've had to pivot pretty hard. Still very committed to our coastal work expansion. But just to share that, it's not real public yet, but that is a big expansion for us. Currently, we own or have protected over 6,000 acres in all the watersheds. This map here is a little bit outdated, but it kind of gives you a good idea of the two ways we protect land. One is through purchase, acquisition, which are those brown dots. And then also we work with private landowners on conservation easements, where they continue to own the land, and essentially we've protected it from development, is a kind of a simple way to put it. And so that's another tool that we have in our toolbox that we can use to protect land, but not have to own it and work real closely with private landowners who care and steward their land and want to see it preserved as well. We have 15 full-time staff also. So at the bottom there, I wrote, we found ourselves in this unique position to help. We had these amazing relationships, having been around for quite some time. And then for myself personally, being with the trust for 12 years now, we have members up and down the watershed, people that support the trust, people that volunteer for the trust, that have given in so many ways to support our organization. That in the end were directly impacted by this fire, as well as other relationships that we've developed in town with agencies and businesses. And that when this tragedy happened, we found ourselves in a position where we could try to connect needs that we were hearing upriver with sources in town, essentially. And it just kind of went from there. So to back up a little bit about our owned properties upriver, Teresa asked if I would offer some before and after shots. I have a couple of here. This is our Finrock Reach property that we bought a few years ago from Roseboro. And as you can see, this before and after is of Finrock Boat Landing, which was part of that acquisition. And as you can see, I had actually taken a whole bunch of photographs just a few weeks before the fire of Finrock Reach in this area. And so I kind of had some pretty thankful for those images. So this was 277 acres, or is 277 acres. Of course, it was impacted, as you can tell, by the fire. On the map on the left, it's a little digitized, but you can see it's 2 miles of river frontage on both sides of the river, including that boat landing. And so, yeah, we're still kind of getting out there on the ground and learning what the true impacts are. As you're looking at this before and after images, what we own is mainly the riparian area, kind of what's closer to the river. The background there, that slope, that was actually originally Roseboro's tree farm is what they used to call it, and is now currently owned by Campbell Global. So that piece is not ours, just to kind of give you a little bit of more information about what you're looking at there. In addition, here's another pretty, and another image that was taken fairly recently. We have a drone and we're able to utilize it. So I think our stewardship staff person was standing on Quartz Creek Bridge looking upriver. And so that is, the river, that river stretch is what we own for the most part between the highway and the slope coming down. And yeah, it tells its own story, right? And so again, we had about 350 acres that were burned in the fire, including Finrock Reach, and then we own 2 properties that were overlooking Blue River as well, that were also burned in the fire. I learned recently that the last big fire in this corridor was in 1855. Which is kind of an interesting perspective to step back and think about what we are getting to witness in our lifetime, right? Not only the fire and this rebuilding, but also just the restoration and the decisions that'll be made with the current science that we have and how we can come together and take care of this watershed that we all rely on. And again, for the trust, we're in the forever business. We're buying these lands to preserve in perpetuity. It's so we look at it and yes, it really hurts your heart, but at the same time, nature's resilient. So, we're hopeful, looking forward to spring to see which trees are deciduous trees, especially popping back, leaves, and actually already seeing that on some of the properties. So, so stepping back to kind of the days after when MRT pivoted to help with urgent needs, and I was talking about those valuable relationships that we had already, which put us in this unique position to be able to help in various ways. One of the first things we did was to start raising money, completely focused our fundraising efforts to raise money for the United Way Lane County Wildfire Relief Fund. Within 1 week, that fund had over $400,000 in it, which is just incredible, has more than doubled now. And gosh, week later, I was already witnessing, and we were already witnessing those dollars going directly into the community to help with urgent needs. And then, of course, also looking at both midterm and long-term needs that'll be met through this fund and others as well. So that was one way we were able to pivot, as well as, you know, in the beginning there, I'm sure you're all familiar with seeing on the news, or maybe you got out there and volunteered yourself. I'm sure many of you have and did and are still volunteering your time. But, you know, that image on the left is Silky Field, which, you know, very much was a grassroots effort of folks that just stepped up to help. You can kind of see some of our staff unload. We collected donations in front of Weimart on Wednesdays, like, what can we do? So we started doing that, just very whatever we could do, and realize when we were donating these goods that there was no organization around volunteers. There was, you know, as far as obviously a lot of volunteers were needed to make these relief centers happen, and organization and making sure people showed up or were set for particular shifts throughout the day, not to have everybody show up at one time and then not enough people another time during the day. So, you know, we have this amazing volunteer program and a platform, essentially this platform where our volunteer coordinator went home that night and spent all night setting up a volunteer registration platform for the relief centers. And we coordinated volunteers for the Roosevelt Relief Center, which is the image there on the right, 7 days a week for as long as that was open. As well. And then with just making those calls to local businesses, you know, local businesses that we have worked with for a long time. This next slide here shows our business supporter program. And, you know, this program has been, gosh, I think we've had it maybe about 6 or 7 years now, and just local businesses investing in our work, investing in local natural lands and waters, and this is a big part of our budget now, actually. But these long relationships and opportunities that we've had, businesses bringing out their employees to volunteer on the land, our annual Business Supporter Appreciation Day, and all these different ways that people have been able to connect and support us. Well, when we suddenly heard upriver that, for instance, there was no communication, and they probably weren't going to be getting any internet communication upriver, especially in that upper McKenzie, Bridge, Rainbow, Blue River area. And school was about ready to start. And as we all know, we're relying on virtual school right now. And so I picked up the phone to some of our local tech companies that have been supporting us for a long time and said, this is the need. I had no idea when I made that call and made that request that I literally would be asking them to climb mountains. You can see those images there. They were able, and this was no easy feat, they were able to work with Ben Broadband to bring a signal in that bounced from Hoodoo to Carmen Smith to, Castle Rock, and then into McKenzie Bridge area. And on top, I mean, it was not that simple. It was extremely complicated and still is, and they're still having to, you know, maintain that. As well as calling a Wildish donated gravel for the relief centers, and TerraTech donated masks for the volunteers and gloves for the volunteers, and just Ninkasi there on the bottom helped deliver food for Lane County for one of the relief centers upriver. So it was just great examples of us as a community coming together and just stepping up, whether it's individuals or businesses. We all share this place, and just is so worth, I think, showcasing the just all of us stepping up to care for each other in whatever way we can and whatever resources. Another example of a resilient community is wanting to showcase the McKenzie Community Development Corporation, which is upriver nonprofit. It's all volunteer driven, that has been around for many years, and they've been raising money for different efforts upriver, like the library and the water board and other things, the health clinic in Blue River. And they immediately pivoted to be focusing on urgent needs as well as long-term needs. You know, they're the ones that they live there. They know better than anybody you know, what their community needs, and is strongly connected. Many of those, the people on the board for the CDC also lost their homes or were impacted. And they, I watched as, you know, they stepped up and were putting community first before themselves. And actually my husband and I have been volunteering quite a bit for the CDC since the beginning, and just helping in whatever way we can, specifically at the relief centers. So as the rain comes, there's great possibility, and I'm sure many of you have heard this, of landslides on 126 with the streets, the steep slopes and loss of vegetation, trees. And so the CDC stepped up to take on relief centers at both the western side of the corridor of the fire, as well as the east side at McKenzie Bridge at the school, and information centers as well. And then in between on the corridor, because again, it's a good 25-mile stretch of the burn, having a couple of trailers, enclosed trailers with food and water located at the fire stations in Nimrod and in Vida as well. And just in case, you know, something were to happen and the highway gets cut off for an unknown amount of time, there'll be food and water available for people upriver, as well as, of course, the long-term rebuilding of Blue River itself. I don't know if many of you remember last year, for about 3 weeks, the community of Blue River couldn't even drink their water because it was contaminated. So that community has been hurting for a long time. And, you know, and of course, hopeful that this is an opportunity to get a new septic system, a new water system, a lot of the kind of basic community services that they lost as well, and really a huge rebuilding and re-envisioning opportunity for this community. Also wanting to share about the Pure Water, eWeb's Pure Water Partners program, which, you know, as a community member, I am personally so grateful for having a utility that thinks outside the box. And that's what eWeb has done. You know, this is, we have one drinking water source, as we talked about earlier, the McKenzie, and that is not a normal thing for most. I think maybe, and Janine can, and I'm going to ask Janine to share a few words here from eWeb, Janine Parisi, but I believe that it's one of the few places and utilities in the Northwest that has one source, that we have one source of drinking water. And so we really need to take care of this river. I mean, things can change in the future as far as a second source, but right now, this is, you know, our focus. And the eWeb has a Pure Waters Partners program where they've been working with private landowners for many years to help educate and offer resources on caring for their riverbank. And they really pivoted this program immediately after the fires, and MRT has actually committed 3 staff to help. And Janine, if you're in there on there, if you can talk a little bit, I'd love for you to share a little more detail about the PWP, if you don't mind.
Sure, thanks, Brandi. I guess I would just start with, you know, there's been a lot of heartache over the level of devastation, but one bright spot is that I get to work with Brandi a lot more frequently, and I really, really appreciate that. It's a wonderful way to reconnect, since I haven't seen her very often since we don't do our Greenland meetings. So that's a bright spot. You know, it's hard to wrap your brain around the scale of this fire. And early on, I saw this map, and it was from somebody from ODF who showed all 5 large fires over the past couple of years in Oregon superimposed on the Holiday Farm fire. And the Holiday Farm fire geographically was larger than all of those 5 fires combined. And then you just think about, this is one of what, 6 or 7 fires across the state that happened all around the same time. So the magnitude of what's going on is really hard to fathom. And what I'm really happy to be able to tell you is that I think we're further ahead than some of our other partners in terms of recovery, because we have some of those partnerships and we have the framework and network of collaboration already established up and down our watershed. And that's a really good thing. And it's really paying off in dividends you can't even imagine in terms of our ability to get in and start doing work quickly. So heard from the Forest Service that they pegged this fire at $68 million. I don't know if that's a large amount or a small amount compared to some other fires, but that seems like a big number to me. One of the other things that's different about our fire in the Holiday Farm area is that 70% of the land impacted is private land and only 30 is public, so Forest Service and BLM. And that's really different than some of our other watersheds where the large majority of the property is publicly owned forest land. So it is going to require a different kind of partnership to restore this area and protect our watershed, because we need a public-private partnership more than ever. So just about the PWP, you know, again, we're very fortunate to have already had this kind of public-private partnership in place, and just pivoted from kind of working with landowners to reward them for good stewardship practices to basically helping them recover. And our focus has been those properties. You can see those little like gray and orange dots on the map. Those are what we're calling our high priority properties. There's about 150 to 160 properties that are on steep slopes right along the river or along major drainages and in heavily burned areas. And on those properties where everything's just been absolutely decimated, we want to be pulling back debris away from the river, stabilizing slopes, trying to keep that toxic ash from entering our river, and helping community members with some of that erosion control measures. So we've gotten through about 50 to 70 of those properties in terms of erosion control, and we're and waste stabilization, and are happy to see the EPA finally on the ground here, and are hoping they're going to pick up the rest of that work in terms of not just doing the hazardous waste removal, but also doing some of the waste stabilization that EWEB started. So these pictures that Brandi's got are combinations of our PWP partners, and you know, they've had to go grab some other folks from other watershed councils and soil and water conservation district to put together a team of assessors who can help us with this work. And you can see them, Northwest Youth Corps, we've got them on contract to help create wattles. So those snake looking things are natural erosion control that are, you know, filled with wood chip debris that was from the fire, that was chip material. And we're using those for erosion control. And then you can see in the top picture, silt fencing. So that's another way to try to keep material out of the river, throwing down hay bales to, you know, try to protect that soil and hold as much material on the ground as possible from going in the river. The PWP is also doing burn assessments for property owners. So they've got, I think they've hit over 100 properties so far, people who've raised their hands and said, hey, I could use some help with figuring out what to do with my property in the interim and basically winterize it. So if you think about, you know, everyone's cleaning out their gutters, these folks have a whole lot more to do than that, because they've got to try to keep their slopes stable and get ready for replanting and getting some material on the ground before the heavy rain. So we're just in the beginning stages of starting those treatments. I think we've got about 20 under our belt so far, and we'll continue to do that work. And the EWEB board, you know, recognizing the length of time it would take to get FEMA or money in our hands to do this work, fronted this. So they approved $1.1 million at their October meeting, which is allowing us to pay our partners to get out there and get these best management practices on the ground. So it's a huge collaboration. It's great to see the youth doing this work. They've been super productive. We've had support from City of Eugene. They've given us arborists to help us with hazard tree identification. They've given us an erosion control expert to train the Northwest Youth Corps on how to do these practices. County and DEQ have been like with us lockstep, working with EPA and making sure that we have access to materials like chips and trees to work with restoration. So at a time when, you know, everyone says that government doesn't work and you can't trust your public institutions, I would have to say that, you know, I've been really, really proud to see our local partners and our government agencies really step up and work together and put us in a good place. There's still a lot of risk involved. We have a long-term recovery ahead of us, but we're well positioned to take good care of ourselves, and just really appreciate all the partnership and the work on the ground. What, Brandi?
Thanks, Janine. That was really helpful. I appreciate you really diving in deep on the program and what's happening on the ground, because I know everybody is wondering, and as we're, you know, driving upriver, whether you've been upriver yet or not, and the impact is severe, and however we can help those private landowners that really want to make, you know, the right decisions for their land, for the river, and care. And so it's wonderful to be able to bring some knowledge and resources and partners together to help in whatever way we can collectively. So again, yeah, this is the Northwest Youth Corps, and so thankful for them as well. I think a lot of people in our community don't know about the Northwest Youth Corps, are not very familiar, but how fortunate we are to have their headquarters here. And they have really stepped up, not only with the PWP, but also working with the county. They worked with us at MRT, cleaning up the boat landing to make it safe after the fires, as well as one of the relief centers that had a lot of damage surrounding. And so it's, again, just another example of the collective community coming together and stepping up and bringing our resources and, you know, elbow grease. So just kind of circling back around to how you can help. Yeah, I know Thomas mentioned earlier about, you know, the recovery.org, and maybe he can share a little more about that. You know, different businesses, you can get on the website and offer, share different resources that you might have that you might be able to contribute. Again, this is it's a long road ahead. This isn't just, you know, for right now, needs right now. There's probably going to be needs and months and years down the road that none of us even anticipate. So that is definitely something wonderful to be able to contribute, as well as volunteering. I know, you know, right now for MRT at least, you know, we had a kind of a pause with COVID, but we're starting to baby step back into volunteer opportunities, and especially as we're moving forward with restoration on our properties and beyond, there's going to be lots of opportunities to come out and help plant as a community and just really come together to help in recovery for this river that we share. And then as well as just give, being able to donate and in support of the effort, whether it's with wildfire relief or directly to the McKenzie River recovery. I listed just a few different options there, or both. That United Way Fund, as I shared earlier, was really instrumental in the beginning and will continue through the end, and just helping different efforts, a variety of different efforts, important things that are happening regarding recovery, as well as the McKenzie Community Development Corporation is a nonprofit, and then of course the Red Cross. And then I also noted our work at McKenzie River Trust, as well as the Watershed Council, which is again another nonprofit that's always, their role is working with private landowners and doing restoration, caring for this river. So lots of ways to lean in there. And then just a slide, nature and people need each other. I took this photo, gosh, I want to say the first weekend of October at the Blue River Park, and was just kind of really taken back by the fact that the playground was pretty much perfect and intact, and pretty much the entire forest around the trees around the park will most likely, many of which will have to come down. And it just kind of makes you pause for sure, and also looking at the future, and you know, just the resiliency of all of us, and this natural world that we rely on. And lastly, just wanted to offer an invitation. If you want to get out on the ground and get outside and get some of that balance that Teresa was helping to try to inspire. We're not doing public tours, which we usually do throughout the year because of COVID, but we've kind of adapted to this Green Island Exploration Day. I think we're going to start doing them once a month, where we're going to open up the gates to our 1,200 acre property where the McKenzie and Willamette come together. And you come out and just explore, whether you bring your fly rod or your mountain bike, or your picnic lunch, or just walk and watch the birds, whatever it might be, an opportunity just to get out on November 14th and the day after Thanksgiving on Friday as well. And so the more information, of course, on our website at McKenzieRiver.org under events as well. That's what I have for now, Therese, and open for questions if we have time.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask?
Have you guys been collaborating with the Hope Project with Ken Brown and that group?
No, I'm not familiar.
He's also doing some work up the McKenzie, helping individual landowners with cleanup and restoration and things. It's another nonprofit here.
So the COAD is familiar with the Hope Project. There's a lot of actually nonprofits and others that have set up shop and collecting money in relationship to fire recovery and restoration and relief.
Great to hear more.
Brandi, this is Angie Marzano. Thank you so much for your presentation. I really appreciate it. I've been really curious. After 22 years as a civilian, I went back to work as a firefighter. I used to be a hotshot, and I was assigned to the Archie Creek fire. And so I was out for 2 weeks on that fire. And one thing I was really struck by during the experience of going through these zones that were basically just, the temperatures were so hot that no tree was able to survive. The soil was completely obliterated. How does restoration look? I mean, you kind of explained that. On some level, we're trying to protect steep slopes. We're trying to put in berms and barriers to prevent that runoff. But along the McKenzie, where we had so many structures that have asbestos, that had materials that potentially contained asbestos or heavy metals or all of the things that we don't want to see in the McKenzie. What does that look like for clearing the property and then beginning restoration? Because we're running out of time. And what is that stopgap measure before those rains come? And we really have no chance of stopping that runoff.
Yeah, thanks, Angie. Very yeah, important question. And actually, I'm going to pass it off to Janine, because I think she could really dig in a little deeper on, because that's exactly the purpose of the PWP and the assessments, and trying to get as many done as possible, as quickly as possible before the rains come, which hence why the increased partnership and all the nonprofits coming together and contributing, committing staff to help with those assessments, so we can get, as time is of the essence, as you were sharing. And please feel free to add, Janine.
I guess the nutshell is EPA is on the ground. They're going to be doing hazardous waste removal. It burns so hot that they're not going to find a lot of hazardous waste to remove. There's just not going to be a lot left. So second stage is regular debris removal. So that's all the burned structures, hazard trees, vehicles. That won't start till December, which is why the $1.1 million and the ability for EWEB and its partners to get on the ground and start pulling material back and put the silt fencing down and the wattles down to keep that material under tarps and from leaching into the river is so important. And we had hoped to get through 100 or 150 of those properties. We didn't get access agreements. We can't do that without permission by the landowner. So we were able to get through about 70 of them and are hopeful that the EPA will be able to get to the rest of them in the next week or two.
Wow. Other questions? It is amazing.
I guess the one more thing I'd say is that tree mortality is super severe, but we did see some maps yesterday from the bear assessment that look like soil severity, the soil burn is not as bad. And that's very hopeful because if the soil is intact, that means that nature will recover. So even though the tree mortality looks really, really terrible across a huge part of the landscape, the soil mortality is not quite as severe. So that's a good thing.
That's
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Great thing. Other questions? Maybe one or two more?
I'm so sorry. I had somebody walk in and ask a question right while you were at this part I really wanted to hear, and that was about the chips and putting chips down. Do you guys have those chips secured, and do you have enough?
We have a pile at Good Pasture that the county has been making available to us, but my understanding is we'll take more. So if there is another location that there can be chip material made available for restoration, we'll use them.
That's interesting. Is the Red Cross helping you with that? Because I'm talking with so many different people about different things, and they asked me about chips.
The Red Cross?
Yeah, and I'm supposed to have a call with her about that later today.
I'm not familiar with that. I thought the Red Cross was really dealing with housing issues. So
Yeah.
if you want to circle back with me, Casey, I'd be curious what the relationship between the Red Cross and chips are.
Yeah, totally. Me too.
As far as I know, just speaking professionally, the Red Cross's scope wouldn't include the chips and that kind of relief effort. And Red Cross is currently pulling out of our county fairly quickly, just so you know.
So yeah, maybe Janine and Casey can touch base after the phone call and figure out how, if Casey has chips, since she works and owns wood products, that could be really great. So awesome.
And in the Red Cross's defense, they're not totally overstepping in that we're doing a blood drive with them and some other stuff. And sometimes they just point people in the right direction as part of their job. So I'm not implying on this that they're stepping on somebody's toes. I'm just wondering.
Oh, no, I wasn't either. The Red Cross does wonderful things, and there are a bunch of volunteers like us out there trying to show up. And that's the thing is, as far as the scope of Red Cross, they don't go that far in their scope of what the federal government actually regulates what the Red Cross can do on these situations. So they are actually very much hand-tied as to how far and how much relief they can provide. But there is opportunity. So through the COAD, we actually have a bunch of volunteers that still haven't been used or activated because we don't have enough organizations out there to take on the volunteers and use them up the McKenzie. So there are resources and other people with hay bales and everything else that want to come up the McKenzie. We just need to have a better ability to use these resources that have been put before us. Right now, we've been dealing with the urgent, and we now need to kind of transition into recovery. So there's still a whole.
Maybe you and Brandi can brainstorm about that on a separate call, because I think that sometimes it's good to connect the dots. It sounds like the trust is working with a lot of the groups up there. So maybe you guys can talk about, he may have volunteers and there may be a need, and there needs to be some. So I'm gonna pull this to an end. I want to say a special shout out to Angie for going back to her firefighter days. You're really brave to do that. It's a really scary thing to go into the fire. Having used to gone out with a firefighter, I know that can be super scary. So hats off to you. A little crazy, but good job being out there on the line. Couple things just to wrap things up, and maybe Brandi can stay after for any follow-up questions after we conclude the official meeting. Next month is Bold Steps finalists. The mayor will be giving us a taped presentation along with the 3 finalists. We'll be giving out the Daniel Swantek Award. And again, we're looking for topics, both for speaker topics and if you want to spotlight your business. We do have spaces for that. You should talk to Robin. Also a quote about resilience. Persistence and resilience only comes from having been given the chance to work through difficult problems. And obviously we're all working on that as we speak. So hang in there, and maybe Brandi can stay after. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. Really appreciate it. Good work, Janine. Hats off to all you volunteers. It's a crazy time. So. if there are any follow-up questions for Brandi or for Janine.
Yeah, happy to stay on if you have anything.
So I had a question just about the volunteer aspect. Is the McKenzie Development Corporation, are each different entity looking for volunteers? How are they all managing that?
Yeah, the McKenzie CDC is looking for volunteers at the relief centers.
Right.
So the relief center, up McKenzie Bridge, Upper McKenzie Community Center, as well as the historic hatchery. So there's 3 sites. And so, yeah, I think, they have the website and an email address that you can volunteer or get your name on a list.
And the trust, you guys are obviously taking donations and that sort of thing.
Right, that sort of thing. That sort of thing keeps us going.
Yeah, crazy times, man. Well, it's
It
amazing
is.
what has happened and just how people have stepped up, and especially how your organization has pivoted, and Thomas's involvement. There's been so many people that have been heartbroken by this, and the Archie and the Santiam and just so many things. It's so overwhelming, but it is so great that locally we're really able to coordinate and get the help, at least for now, what's needed, even though it's going to be years, like it was in Paradise. They're still digging out of that. So it's going to be years. It's going to look different, and it's going to take all of us.
It will be, absolutely. Well, thanks again for the opportunity to share, Teresa.
I really appreciate it. It means a lot. There's a lot going on. And we will also put this available on our Facebook site and our YouTube channel, so people that weren't able to be here can view, because a lot of people are very interested in what's happening. And so it's good to be able to share that.
Yeah.
So again, we appreciate your time. Thanks for everything, you guys. All of you do great work.
Thank you, Teresa, for coordinating.
Anytime. It's my pleasure. It's important.
Take care.